it was such an honor. It was really great that we all came along at the same time. Flair broke in about the same time I did. I think it was 73. And he was here in the Mid-Atlantic area because I'm talking to you from Charlotte right now. When I had to leave, I continued to stay in Charlotte. It is my home now. I've been living here since 75, almost from the beginning of my career. So I love it here. And I don't want to go back to Michigan mainly because of the weather, but virtually most of my career was here, working for the Crockett family. And then in the late 80s, they ran into some difficulty, and they had to sell it to Turner, and I went with them, and of course I got hurt. You can see the injury anytime you ever want. Just pull up Tommy Young on YouTube, and it shows what happened to me and how you don't actually see me get hurt, but you see me disappear from the picture, and then I'm laying there, and it was goodbye career. But Flair, like I said, came along in 73. He was here when I got here, but he was just getting the push. They had just had a bad plane crash here that happened in late 75. My first year down here, really, I wasn't even living here yet, was 75. I was working for the old IWA, that organization that formed in 75, and we were kind of going in opposition everywhere to different establishments. New York, when it was 3W and not F, it was actually E. It was actually Worldwide Wrestling Federation. It was what it was originally called, and they dropped it to just Worldwide or World Wrestling Federation. And then I guess they had a copyright problem with the World Wildlife Fund or something. They were like WWF, so they switched it to WWE, which is what it is now, World Wrestling Entertainment. And it's always been entertainment, but they totally changed it around where it's what it is now is nothing that I even remember. And I probably wouldn't even fit in as much now because they don't hardly do anything with the referee anymore. And they're geared mainly to children now. Wrestling is not for all people anymore. It's basically for the kids. They've turned it into that kind of thing. And but anyway, Flair was here, and things were taken off in '76. He worked a program with Wahoo because he had to recuperate a little bit. Some people in that crash in the plane recuperated okay, and others were maimed forever. Johnny Valentine being one of them. Flair was okay. He had a back injury, but he came back and he worked a program that year, '76 with Wahoo, real strong. And in '77, Steamboat came along. He actually broke in Minnesota, same place where Flair did, even though Flair's from that area, where Steam is from St. Petersburg, Florida, the same city where Hulk Hogan's from. And he came in from Georgia. He was working down in Georgia. Ole was kind of running things, I think, back then. It was '77. And Ole didn't like Steamboat style or something. I don't remember the exact situation, but he came in, and he was just, going to work underneath. And I remember we were in a town called Colonial Heights, which is a suburb of Richmond, what I was just talking about a little while ago. We're going to have a small show there. We call them spot shows. And back then, one referee just did everything. And I was the referee that night, and he was wrestling. Steamboat was wrestling in a prelim match. A guy that's still here in Charlotte. He's retired and still looks great. A guy named Sergeant Jacques Goulet. And they wrestled a Broadway, which we called it. That's a draw. They just went to a 20-minute draw. And the people, I remember, just went nuts over Steamboat. And I remember going back to my boss, George Scott, because I used to have to report. I mean, there are certain things that aren't really very well respected and said. You try to keep away from them, but one of the words is stooge. And I was one of the people. I was I had to report to George, let him know how the matches were and everything. After George left, I didn't have to do that anymore, but I understood why George did it, and all referees had to do it. They had to report. We were his eyes and ears. You know, he can't be at all the shows, and back then we were running 2-3 shows a night. I was around, a fellow named Zach Murray. Earl was here. David was here briefly, but Dave left pretty quick to go with McMahon right from the beginning, and then Earl went later on when they did that fantastic twin brother situation, if you remember, between Andre and Hogan. What a brilliant, what a brilliant angle that was. That was just out of this world. And but I told George, I said, boy, you really might want to take a look at this kid. God, the audience loved him. And it was Flair that went to George and said, give me Steamboat. I think we can work a hell of a program. And they worked a deal where I think Steamboat, Flair, rubbed his face on the concrete, and they hard weighed it. I mean, he didn't gimmick himself up before it. Flair literally rubbed his face right across the doggone floor on the concrete, and Steam's face was all scuffed up. I know that hurt like hell. And then later on, Flair comes out with 2 gals. Not that same day, of course, but I think it was about a week or 2 later where Steamboat supposedly had recuperated, and he attacked Flair and beat the hell out of him and stripped him down to just his little skivvy briefs, you know. And anyway, that thing took off, and that was 1977. That's when they first started wrestling. And right up until the end of my career, 1989. Back and forth. Every match I did, I just loved. I mean, they went together like, you know, love and marriage, horse and carriage, bacon and eggs. I mean, their styles just complemented each other. They were super athletes who had a great regimen in working out. Flair's conditioning was absolutely incredible. I used to work out with him, and he had a Stairmaster. Not one of those ones where you just pump it, but an actual stairs that you climb, like an escalator. And I watched him one time do 100 flights of stairs, and he was barely even breathing. I could do 20, 25, and I'm huffing and puffing. My legs get so heavy. And I considered myself to be in reasonably good shape, but nobody was in the shape Flair was. He could blow up anybody, but he couldn't blow up Steamboat. He could not blow up Steamboat because Steamboat had as good a work ethic as Flair did. And they just complemented each other so well and drew nothing but money. And by the grace of God, I just happened to come along at the same time, so you had all 3 of us in there together. And they knew that they could do anything, and I'd be there for them. There were always tons of false finishes, you know, a lot of 1-2s and coming out of it at the last second, and sometimes I'd put my hands up together to see how close it was, and I never saw anybody do that. It was just something that happened. There were times I'd slide across the ring, and there were times I'd slide right out of the ring on the floor and take a bump, and banged myself up a few times doing that, but just to show the hustle of it. Get a guy in the corner and you're standing on the turnbuckle, second turnbuckle, pounding on him, and I would get out of the ring and hold the ring post and where I'm counting, where you can see my count. Didn't have to do that, but I thought it added to it a little bit. And anything that they didn't want me to do, I wouldn't do, but nobody ever told me, don't do that, I don't like that. And believe me, if they tell you to do something or that you don't like or that they don't like, you listen. They're the bosses. They're the ones that are bringing the fans in. I mean, I'm helping, but the fans don't even know I'm going to be there. They're going to see the main event. So these are the guys. And my body never took the pounding theirs did. I probably took more bumps than anybody else did, referee-wise. But, I mean, these guys are taking these bumps all the time. I'm taking one every so often. So there was no comparison whatsoever. But it was such an honor to be in there with those 2 guys. I have nothing but total respect for them. They're my heroes. And they made me a good living. I mean, you know, we drew so much money with them. And the better the house, the better the payoff. So we used to have a thing where we called it A team, B team, and C team. And certain guys, if they were the main event, we're on C team tonight, meaning it's not going to draw. And other guy, we're on B team or on A team, something like that. But back in the 70s, late 70s or early 80s, when George Scott was running it, we sometimes had three shows a night, and it was very busy, and it was really great working with those two guys. I don't get a chance to see Steam. It's hard to stay in touch with him, but I saw him at WrestleCade too, and Flair was there as well. A bunch of guys were at WrestleCade in Winston-Salem about 6 months ago, and it was great to see everybody there. Ricky's boy, Ricky Jr., was with him. Unfortunately, he had a back injury, which really torpedoed a great career there because that kid had it all. A handsome kid, good body, humble attitude, but it didn't work out. So I forget what he's doing now, but he's doing well. I think he's living down in Florida with Rick. He might even be one of the trainers down there because that's where their school is. And Flair is living in Atlanta. I don't stay in touch with him. I did see him at WrestleCade, and had a nice visit with him. But they're both doing well, I guess, and I wish them all the luck in the world. And it was just a great honor to be their referee.